What's going on, guys? Welcome to the video. So the Liberal Democrats and the SNP plan to force a general election 3 days earlier than Boris Johnson does because they somehow think that's going to help them win a general election, I guess. I really don't know. Either way, it seems pretty stupid and just being very tit for tat with Boris Johnson. Obviously, he wants it on the 12th of December. They want it on the 9th of December. Now, we've got an article here from BBC News discussing it, and we've also got a clip that just aired on the Andrew Marr show. So we'll read through this article and then we'll take a look at the clip and go over that as well. Lib Dems and SNP plan to force earlier poll. The Liberal Democrats and the Scottish National Party have joined forces in a bid to trigger a 9th of December election. And they have asked EU Council President Donald Tusk to grant a 3-month extension of the date for Brexit. Well, we all know they've been collaborating with Tusk and Barnier and the rest of them over there, so that doesn't surprise me in the slightest. The parties say they reject Boris Johnson's later election date, which they believe would include time for him to ram through his Brexit bill. Well, that is the exact aim of it. He said that. So why would they believe it when we all know that's a given fact? That's exactly what he plans to do. But Mr Johnson has said that MPs cannot hold the country hostage over Brexit, and it was time to move on. The Prime Minister proposed a slightly later date of 12th of December for an election when he made his offer on Thursday, as I said earlier. He said if MPs support his vote in the Commons to call an election, he will use the remaining time before Parliament is dissolved on the 6th of November to try to pass the legislation for his Brexit deal. Labour has rejected his election call unless a no-deal Brexit is taken off the table, while the DUP, key allies of the Conservatives until Mr Johnson announced his Brexit deal, has reserved judgment until Monday. Well, no deal is already essentially off the table because Boris said in a letter to Jeremy Corbyn the other day, if he wins a general election, he will push through his deal. So he's got no plans for a no-deal Brexit as it stands or as he's letting on. And I can't see him going for a no-deal Brexit because he's quite happy with his deal. He got a deal. He did what people said he couldn't. He performed the impossible. He will be remembered for that, even if Brexiteers don't really like it. The majority of the population will just remember that because not everyone's that involved in Brexit, to be honest. The Lib Dems and SNP say they support an election to unlock Parliament, but only on their timetable. That's good. They want to lose on their own timetable. I like that. It's honourable. About the only honourable thing they've done, but honourable nonetheless. SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford said he and Lib Dem leader Toe Swinson have written to Mr Tusk seeking an extension until at least January the 31st. A date specified by the UK earlier this month. He said this was necessary in order to remove the risk of a devastating no-deal Brexit. Once that has been secured, he said the two parties would work to bring forward an election on Parliament's terms, not on the Prime Minister's. Opposition parties would not be bullied by a Prime Minister who has shown utter contempt for Parliament and who has attempted to railroad through his damaging deal without a shred of scrutiny or due process, Mr Blackford said. I love how they say that Boris Johnson has shown an utter contempt for Parliament when every single MP in Parliament has shown utter contempt for the voters in this country. But Mr Johnson warned MPs could just waste the next 3 months debating Brexit if the UK was given an extension until the end of January. The PM said he did not want an election and would rather be getting on with governing the country, but urged MPs to back his election timetable and move our country forward. How he can not want an election is beyond me. He's in a minority government where he can't even pass his own Queen's speech. So he needs an election more than anybody else. He can't continue as Prime Minister in a minority government. It's just an insane situation where we've got Labour providing confidence and supply to the Tory government. Something that's never happened before. But that can't continue, and surely it won't. Millions of businesses and people cannot plan their futures, he said. This paralysis is causing real damage and the country must move on in 2020. Yeah, not necessarily with the Boris Johnson deal, but he is right on that. Liberal Democrat leader Jo Swinson said her party could not support Mr Johnson forcing through a bad deal. She said that Boris Johnson had missed his do-or-die deadline for Brexit of 31st of October, obviously. But to be honest with you, he hasn't missed it. Yous lot took it away from him. Parliament took control and forced him to ask for an extension. That cannot be laid at Boris's feet. The bad deal, technically that can be laid at Boris's feet. But the extension and things like that, missing the 31st of October, that wouldn't be Boris Johnson's fault at the end of the day. That's Parliament's fault. As he said, and as everyone knows, the extension letter was sent by Parliament, not by Boris Johnson. He didn't even sign it. So he didn't send it, he did what Parliament made him do by law. The Lib Dems and the SNP intend to introduce a short amendment to the Fixed Term Parliaments Act, which would specify the polling day for the next election as the 9th of December. It is understood the date was chosen as one of the earliest opportunities for an election, given the time needed to pass the amendment and the required 5 weeks' notice before polling day. Ms Swinson said we need to get Boris Johnson out of office, unlock the gridlock in Parliament and give people the chance to vote to stay in the EU. Which, considering Boris Johnson is sitting at like 40 points in the polls compared to Labour's 24 and Jo Swinson's 15 or something like that, I don't see how they plan to get Boris Johnson out of office. They're going to solidify him as Prime Minister. Even if an extension happens, people are still going to vote for Boris Johnson. He is still going to get a majority. It might not be a 40 points majority size, it might be more like a 35 or something, but he's still going to get a majority. Who's going to be elected? Jo Swinson? Jeremy Corbyn? No chance. For the Liberal Democrats and Jo Swinson, they don't stand a chance because the way the system works against them. Same with the Brexit Party, UKIP, everybody else at the end of the day. Mr Johnson's plan for an election would require the agreement of 2/3 of MPs under the Fixed Term Parliament Act rules for calling an early general election. The Lib Dem and SNP amendment to the Act would only need a simple majority if they can get the parliamentary time for it to be debated. Say hello to another SO24 motion coming through, much like the Ben Bills one. So get ready for that this week, guys. In their letter to Mr Tusk, Mr Blackford and Ms Swinson urged the EU to grant a longer 3-month extension to give Parliament the assurances that a no-deal exit could not take place before that point. They said they would work together to facilitate an election, giving the people the chance to decide what the UK's next step should be. We believe this is the only way to unlock what has become a deadlocked Parliament and to enable the UK and the EU to move forward, whatever form that takes, they said. The Prime Minister has said his preference would be for a short extension until mid or late November, but opponents fear this would be used to revive the threat of no deal to force through his Brexit bill. What do the Lib Dems and SNP hope to achieve? Analysis by BBC political reporter Jessica Parker. The Liberal Democrats and the SNP have a few things in common. They think they could do well in an early general election. Haha. The SNP might do alright, but the Lib Dems, I think they're in trouble. They don't like Brexit, well, that's a surprise to no one, and they don't want to be seen dancing to Boris's tune. Like I said, this is just a pathetic attempt to change the day. So they've composed their plan for a snap poll on the 9th of December. One source suggested that the ever so slightly earlier date could particularly help the Liberal Democrats because more students would still be in their university towns on the 9th than on the 12th of December. So the Lib Dem canvassers can run round forcing these poor kids in university to vote for them. But the bigger picture is that these two parties might be worried that if Brussels thinks that Parliament isn't actually going to use a longer extension to do anything meaningful, the EU will grant a shorter one instead, designed to apply pressure on MPs to approve the PM's deal, which is exactly what I think the reports about Macron and the EU not wanting to delay is exactly what it's aimed at. Forcing the MPs like Labour, Lib Dems, SNP to vote through Boris's deal to avoid a no deal. So the Lib Dems and SNP are saying give us that longer delay and we will work to break the deadlock. Their plan as it stands hinges on number 10 being interested over to Boris Johnson. And no, we won't go over to Boris Johnson. We will listen to a little bit of what Jo Swinson had to say on the Andrew Marr show after this article was written.
The leader of the Liberal Democrats is with me. Jo Swinson, what is the intention of your short bill, which is coming in, I think, on Tuesday?
Well, this bill is very straightforward. It would set the date for the next election on the 9th of December, but crucially, it would be conditional on there being an extension to Article 50, which would mean no deal was taken off the table. One of the big concerns many people have had about going into a general election has been the fear that we would crash out of the EU without a deal, either during that election or in the immediate aftermath. And our bill removes that threat.
So for all those people who don't trust Boris Johnson not to get us out without a deal, the bill sorts that, but it also gives Boris Johnson what he wants, which is an early general election.
Well, we think we need to resolve this impasse. It's also important that we send a message to the EU because they have not yet granted the extension past Thursday the 31st of October. We thought they might have done on Friday. They have said they're going to wait to see what happens on Monday. And it's important that they recognise that Parliament is able to act. Last time they said, don't waste the time. Boris Johnson has taken time wasting to a new level, proroguing Parliament, not trying to get a deal.
Okay.
We need to resolve it. I think the best way to do that would be a people's vote, but in the absence of proper Labour numbers to do that, a general election would be the other way.
So there you see it. Her motion is just a simple bill to get an election on the 9th of December, because it's different to what Boris Johnson wants. She doesn't want anything added to it. She's not trying to do anything sneaky, of course, from what she says. We have to remember that she's a politician. Anything is possible. But what has to be the most remarkable show of stupidity, she actually sits there saying Boris Johnson has been wasting time by not trying to get a deal. Has she completely missed the fact that Boris Johnson actually got a deal, and that's the reason why they're all scrambling now to do things against him, because they're worried his deal is going to pass? It's just incredible. The stupidity of this woman is beyond me. How is she an MP, and how is she the leader of the Liberal Democrats? And let's be honest, as I've said already in this video, giving Boris Johnson an election is not going to help her. It's really not. I don't understand why she's doing it. But let's move on to the next clip anyway.
Somebody, and I can't remember who it was tweeting overnight, I'm beginning to wonder whether the Lib Dems have a bit of a death wish. And the reason they're saying that is we're now heading for an election, we assume, if this goes through on Tuesday, and you're going to be facing two parties, one which has, with Boris Johnson, whatever you think of Boris Johnson, he is a formidable campaigner with a lot of money and a lot of heft behind him and a single clear message about Brexit on the one hand, and on the other hand you've got Jeremy Corbyn's Labour Party, second largest party, or possibly the largest party in Europe, 500,000 people knocking on doors. He's also a very, very good campaigner, and you're going to see really two huge machines. Traditionally, I'm afraid the Lib Dems have got rather squashed between them. Why is that not going to happen this time?
Well, things are very different now. We've got two men who are stuck in different versions of the past, and we are offering a genuinely brighter future where we stay in the EU and we're able to get on with tackling the issues, whether it's the climate emergency or how we move our country forward. I relish the chance to take on both Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn, because neither one of them is fit to lead our country. And that's why I'm standing as a candidate to be Prime Minister.
And you use that phrase again, I'm going to be Prime Minister, but the truth of the matter is that is an absolutely awesome mountain to climb for the Liberal Democrats. To get, Chuka Umunna talked about getting 200 seats. To get 200 seats, you'd have to win seats like Warrington North, a very famous Cheshire seat. Roy Jenkins failed to take it for the SDP a long time ago. You came not second, not third, but fourth behind UKIP with just 2-point-something% of the vote last time.
Well, you can see that she wastes absolutely no time in saying we've got two men, because she's a feminist and men bad, especially white men like Jeremy Corbyn and Boris Johnson. Old white men, they're the worst of the worst. They voted Brexit, remember? Old white, uncultured, uneducated men. She considers Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn to be the same, even though obviously they are well educated, richer than her, and obviously better campaigners than she is. But you can see she's not very happy Andrew Marr is testing her on the fact she stands no chance at an election. And I'm not even going to address her comments about being Prime Minister. Andrew Marr did a good enough job thoroughly dismantling everything she said and the reasons why she won't. But anyway, let's move on to the next clip.
The chances of you taking Warrington North from the Labour Party, a safe Labour seat, are almost nil.
Well, I'm not going to get into the specifics of whether that seat needs to be on the path to victory, but what is the case is that the Liberal Democrats beat both the Conservatives and the Labour Party in the European elections, the first time that had happened for 100 years. We have had tens of thousands of people joining our party. We have been attracting MPs from both the Conservatives and the Labour Party. And the politics is different now.
And there we have it. Jo Swinson tries to use the fact that the Lib Dems come second in the EU elections as a bragging point. You cannot brag that you're lost. Sorry, I know in this day and age they say, taking part is what counts, but no. You lost, end of story. Second place is not first place, you didn't win, so using that as bragging rights is nothing considering you all got trounced by the Brexit party. You know, supporting Brexit. So if you want to use that as an example of what the country thinks, then technically Brexit and a no-deal Brexit is what the country actually thinks, Joe, you absolute idiot. And yes, you've been attracting MPs from both the Conservatives and the Labour Party. But these were just Lib Dems in Conservative and Labour Party clothing. They flip-flop around from party to party without holding by-elections at the end of the day. Your traitor MPs that have changed parties have less credibility than you do, and your credibility right now is in the minus level, love. Let me tell you that. Yes though, Joe, politics are different. Brexit is happening. You're going to have to suck it up, sweet cheeks. But guys, I'm going to end the video there. There's no point in showing you any more of the interview. It went on for absolutely ages and she just continues talking rubbish. I suggest you do check out the full interview though, because it is a good laugh watching Andrew Marr tear her apart. You can see by the look on her face of the still shot we got, she's in a rag state of affairs. Now before I go, I want to thank the channel's PayPal, Patreon and Subscribe Star members for supporting the channel, along with everyone who watches my videos. Remember to let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Leave a like, subscribe with the notification bell and share this video as it helps the channel a lot, and I will see you all in the next one.
There is a pattern consistent throughout history of oppressed people turning on the oppressors, slaves against their owners, the peasantry against the feudal barons, colonies, Mr. Verhofstadt, against their empires, and that is why Britain is leaving. And it doesn't matter which language you use, we are going and we are glad to be going. We're off.
This Parliament is a dead Parliament. It should no longer sit. It has no moral right to sit on these green benches. They don't like the truth. Twice they have been asked to let the electorate decide upon whether they should continue to sit in their seats, while they block 17.4 million people's votes. This Parliament is a disgrace, but they're too cowardly to give it a go. But the time is coming. The time is coming, Mr. Speaker, when even these turkeys won't be able to prevent Christmas.